Find the answers to questions you may or may not have asked yourself here at Science, Conversations on Cognitive Science, hosted by Elisa Palmer and Sönke Löw. We were at a special event, which was the Coxie Space Day. There we had the chance to talk to a great variety of different people and talk about their fields of interest, may they be students or professors. We talked about various aspects of cognitive science, such as neuroscience, linguistics, philosophy, or artificial intelligence, and many more. All the interviews were kept rather short, and another exception of our bonus episodes will be that not only Sönke and me are hosting, but also our two amazing producers Alina and Sophie, and both will jump into this role of being an interviewer. So stay curious and tune in. Our guest right now is Dr. Annette Hohenberger. She's a lecturer in neuropsychology at the University of Osnabrück, and we are very pleased to have you here today.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me.
So, the structure of today's interviews are going to be a bit different to our normal structure. However, we still start with our introduction game and have one sentence we would like you to finish. The sentence is, as a kid, I always wanted to be.
A farmer.
A farmer?
Yes.
Did you grow up in an urban area or?
No, actually, I grew up in a middle-sized city, but we always went on vacation to southern Bavaria, and there was always a farm where we went, and I loved the work there. I loved the animals, and that made obviously such a big impression on me that I wanted to be a farmer when I was little.
Are you still enjoying animals, or?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying nature and all kinds of creatures, including humans, of course.
That brings us to your field of interest. I've already indicated that you're in cognitive neuropsychology. Mm-hmm. If we would ask you to explain your field of interest to a child, maybe age 10, 12, which would be the simple or most simple way to do so?
Mm-hmm. So I have a diversity of interests. So I have to be a little bit selective now, but maybe I could say I'm interested in how children develop, because it's about how their minds grow and how they change, and it's very exciting to see how in the beginning they can do little things, although they are already very smart and they are much smarter than we think. And I'm particularly interested in how their language grows from first cries to really full-fledged sentences and narratives. And I'm interested in how they understand that other people are acting intentionally with a goal. So not only see that they are moving around, but that they have a goal and want to affect something in the world. These are just two parts, but maybe that's enough for the beginning.
Yeah.
All right. Can you maybe say us when you first started having an interest in this topic? Because that's something I think a lot of people have not really thought about, maybe, or maybe if they have a child, then they see how it develops. But is there something that sparked the interest for you?
Yes, first it was intellectual curiosity, because when I studied, I did not have children yet. They came a little bit later. So I do have 2 children, and I also do have 2 grandchildren already, whom I am observing how they speak and how their language develops. But in the beginning, it was really more an academic curiosity. So I started studying psychology actually at the Frankfurt University, but I knew already from very early on that that was not my only interest, because I have a variety of interests. And after my pre-diploma, I took on a second major, which was linguistics. So I was kind of interdisciplinary from my first study times onwards, and I could not have done otherwise, because one topic would not have been sufficient for me. So I took on these 2 majors and then graduated in both, and I did my PhD then in linguistics, actually about a topic of language development.
Just because I always feel like when it starts with a scientific interest and then comes to more personal matters, when you have own children, for example, do you think the way that, or the fact that you've had knowledge about the development on a theoretical basis had an impact on how you also observed your children or now grandchildren?
Yeah, absolutely. That's true. So when I then had my children, which was actually in the time when I was doing my PhD, which is maybe not the best timing, but anyway, I was attentively observing how they spoke, and I actually took many notes, so I don't have a real big corpus, although I took some audio clips as well, but I made a big, so I had a language diary where I wrote down what they said and what was noteworthy, and I also have in those times collected speech errors of children, because language production, how we produce language, that's also another interest of me between psychology and linguistics. And speech errors are involuntary slips of the tongue that you are doing. Yeah. So the most popular speech error in children is actually mommy, daddy. So they address mommy with daddy and daddy with mommy. So they just exchange the words. But there are many others as well. And I was meticulously noting down the speech errors of both of my children in the beginning. And I think I have the biggest speech error collection in the entire world, which is waiting to be analyzed. So when I will be retired in some time, then my goal is to really analyze this corpus. It has more than many thousands of entries, actually.
So you basically noted down each time you noticed a new speech error. Wow.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How do you know how much or how many errors did you collected?
Well, I guess it must be more than thousands. So it was also over time, yeah. Mm-hmm. And then I had 2 children, so I collected from both of them. So it's a big treasure on which I'm sitting, but at the moment it's inactive. But maybe at some point in time, I would like to come back to that big treasure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's something that, like, no study that is done in a lab or anything similar can really reproduce. That's something that is very, I guess, specific then to your case. I mean, I think every parent could, in fact, create such a library, but
exactly.
I guess nobody does.
Yeah, and since I knew that this is valuable data, I really took the effort and time to write it down. And of course, my children noticed it. And then I had situations where my daughter realized that she had made a slip. Yeah, she was addressing a bird wrongly. She wanted to say Meise, which is titmouse, but she said colibri, which is hummingbird. Yeah. So, and then she noted it and said, I said wrongly, mommy must write down now.
That's really cute.
Yeah.
You already mentioned that you had a lot of different interests, academic interests, and I think that's very typical for the cognitive science student at our university. Is that maybe one reason why you ended up at this institute?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. So the nice thing about cognitive science is that it's really an interdisciplinary field. So it's not just psychology and linguistics, which are my most overlapping fields, but as you know, there is anthropology, there's philosophy, neuroscience, computer science as well. And that's the area where I really feel like a fish in the water, and that I would like to, that I enjoy exploring. And I have done so over the course of my academic development as well. So I was working in linguistics, but also in psychology. And after my PhD, which I did in Frankfurt on language acquisition in linguistics, I stayed on there and I worked in a project on sign language, also slips of the hand. So there are production errors also in sign language. And although they look differently because they are committed with the hands, and also with the body, their linguistic structure is pretty similar to what we know from spoken speech errors. So I was on a project there, and then I went to Munich to the Max Planck Institute for Human Cognitive and Brain Sciences, and that was more cognitive related work there, also on children, how they develop an understanding of goal-directed actions, that we do things intentionally. And after that project, I then went abroad. I lived and worked for 12 years in Turkey, in Ankara, at Middle East Technical University, which has a very beautiful and not too big, but very vibrant cognitive science department in the Informatics Institute. So I was working there, and that was my first position in cognitive science. And from there, some 5 years ago, I came to Osnabrück, and again, it was my desire to stay in the field, and that is what happened, and I'm very glad to be here.
Like you've mentioned that you had quite a long history in cognitive psychology and all the fields. Are there recent findings that really struck you, or where you thought, wow, that's surprising to me, or is a really hot topic at the moment?
So maybe I can relate to that long-standing connection that I still have with my Turkish students, with whom I also published papers on cognitive development. And there's this wonderful project that I had with my doctoral student, who is now a postdoc already, Gökhan Gönül, from Turkey. And his dissertation was about tool use and tool innovation in children. So how they use tools, may that be a spoon for scooping up some food, or may it be more intricate tools. And since children from very early on, less than 1 year of age, use tools already quite skillfully, everybody thought that it's easy for children also to innovate tools, to come up with a new tool if you pose a problem to them. And one standard task is the so-called hook task, where you can imagine you have a tall jar. Sorry that people now cannot see it very well. So if there is a tall jar, and at the bottom of the tall jar is a little bucket with a sticker inside. The bucket has a handle, but you cannot reach into the jar. And the problem for the child is to find a way to get the bucket out of the tall jar. And then you give them certain material, for example, a thread is a string which is bendable but is too wobbly, so you cannot really reach inside and get the bucket out. And you also give them a pipe cleaner. I hope you know what that is. It's bendable, it's flexible, but it is strong, and but it's straight. So the child has to figure out of which of these materials I can make a tool that is suitable for reaching inside the jar and getting that bucket out. And of course, the cognitive challenge is that they have to deform the pipe cleaner into a hook. So they have to bend a hook and then with the hook reach inside and grab the handle of the bucket, get it out and get the sticker. Okay. And since this is something that we as adults can do very easily, and even some animals can do it. So there are big-brained birds like Caledonian crows or rooks that are known to be able, with their beak, to bend a wire into a hook and then do that task. So the idea was that children should be able to invent such a tool, but it turned out they are not, which is has been replicated many times, and it takes them to be like 6 or 7 years of age to have an understanding of how to impose their idea of a hook, if they have generated this idea onto this material and then operate the hook on the problem. So and what we found out, or what Gökhan mainly found out, was that actually children cannot do it very well spontaneously, but if you show them either the ready-made hook or how to do it, they can learn from social learning. And that is something that is like it gives the ability to learn from other people through imitation, through understanding what they are doing and doing it, repeating it themselves. We can solve problems in a much easier way as if we had to innovate it again. Yeah. So this social learning that really speeds up development a lot, and that is something very typical of us humans because we are ultra social beings. Yeah. There is no other species that collaborates so much as we do, and therefore this social learning has such a big impact. And when I realized that, I was really struck by it. We had other findings as well. For example, that 2 children who collaborate together also find the solution earlier, as if each of them works on their own. And that's a natural situation for humans anyway. So we are not solitary beings, but we are constantly working together with other people. And that is something that makes us smart.
Yeah.
Is there something that is missing in the children, or is there a word for it? Because I would first assume that maybe there is like creativity missing, but then again, probably children are always associated with a certain kind of creativity. So is it just a lack of functional understanding, or do we know what causes this?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and many experiments have been done to figure out what is actually missing. And they do have creativity, that's for sure. They are smart as well. So if you give them the ready-made hook or tool, any tool, then they would be able to do it. It's more how to piece those pieces of knowledge together to get the whole action, which has several steps, first conceived in your mind and then kind of projected on the material so that you can form it and shape it, change it to your needs. It's more the combination of it. And think of it, these problems are mostly ill-posed problems, so they don't, you see the end, or you know what the end result should be to get that bucket out, but you have a kind of ill-defined pathway to it. So it's not an algorithm. If you do this and then and so on, then you automatically get there. You have to figure it out, and that is the challenge of innovation, which is challenging for everybody, but for children in particular, because they have to piece this knowledge together.
And especially some bits of knowledge might even be missing, which are quite obvious to an adult human, because for me it would be super obvious to use a hook to get something out of another object. But if I've never seen anyone doing it, I wouldn't know that people do that in that way. Yeah, exactly. So what Gökhan also investigated and found out is that the children have an idea what kind of tool would be needed. So when he let them gesture what kind of tool would be appropriate, they would gesture something like a hook, but still having that representation, which is something cognitive in their mind, to impose it on that material and see, okay, I can use the affordance of that pipe cleaner to bend it. That's not trivial, and they have to figure that out, and then they have the solution. Yeah. You've already mentioned your connections to Turkey. In general, is there any scientist or any person people might know you find really interesting and you would love to have a chat with, maybe drink a cup of tea and just kind of learn what they are currently doing, seeing, and discuss topics with them?
There are certainly lots of people with whom I would like to do that. It is not particularly from one country, I would say, but maybe I would like to have a cup of tea with Nicholas Turk-Browne, because he is that kind of person who really brings areas together and shows that there is overlap between disciplines. And that's, for me, the core of cognitive science. And when I read his papers, I always get the impression that that's exactly what we have to do. So he's a cognitive neuropsychologist. And the paper that inspired me a lot is entitled Babies and Brains, where he showed that a methodology that we use a lot in cognitive development, which is called habituation. I will explain it in a moment. And another technique that we use in neuroscience, which is repetition attenuation, which I always also will explain in a moment, that they are basically the same. But the literatures that cover habituation in children and repetition attenuation in the neuroscience never came together. So people were kind of doing work in parallel, but they did not realize that they are actually the same. Only different people studied the same methodology for different purposes with different populations. And when I realized that, I thought, wow, this is a prime case of really good interdisciplinary collaboration. So let me briefly point out what habituation is. So often we cannot ask very young children what they are thinking, yeah. So because they cannot speak yet. So how do we know what they know? We know it from their behavior, and in particular from their eye movement, because they move their eyes to where something interesting is happening, and in particular where something new is happening. Yeah. So a typical habituation paradigm is, for example, that you show them something, an object, for example, of a particular category, and you repeat this over and over again. So they lose interest in it because it's always the same. So then at some point they look away, and you can monitor their eye movements and can calculate how long they have looked at the object. So then next trial, you show the same object again, child looks, is interested, but at some time, again, is not interested, looks away. And then there is this decrease in attention towards that object, because they have encoded it now really, and they know what it is about. And then comes, so that they have habituated, yeah, they got used to that object. And then there are two test trials. One is you show the same old object again, or an object from the same category maybe, or you show a new object, or an object from a new category. And then you again monitor how long they attend to these objects, and if they have understood that the other object is really something new, that they make a difference between them, they would look longer at that object again. That is called dishabituation. Yeah? Whereas they would look again shortly only at the repeated old object. Yeah. So this is a way in which we can tell, without the child having to speak, that they understood there's a difference between these things, and they clearly represent this difference in their mind. Okay, and that has been widely used in the infant literature. Now, in the neuroscientific paradigm, repetition attenuation is something similar. You present a person who is maybe in the scanner, or who has an EEG cap on, some object again, and then you see in the brain which areas are active. Yeah, and if you present it again and again, the activation in that area becomes less. It is like in habituation. Yeah, and when you then show a new thing, and then another area lights up, and that is then a sign that also in the brain different areas represent that object. It's called repetition attenuation because as you repeat, the attention attenuates, gets less. Yes. Yeah? So the names are different, but the phenomenon is the same. Yeah? And in neuroscience, this is a very good technique to figure out where in the brain certain cognitive processes occur, and you can really see it. Then you know the neural populations that are active when one or the other object is being used. Yeah. And so that's a great technique. And as I said, Turk-Browne has figured out, or has pointed out, that there is this great convergence, and cognitive science lives from the convergence of different strands of research coming together. And here it is on the methodological level, and often it is also on the content level. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much for pointing this out again and explaining it.
Sure.
Well, we are an auditory format, so most people who are listening to the episode won't be able to see what we are seeing right now. Mm-hmm. But our guest, Dr. Annette Hohenberger, has a badge on her jacket which says Science for Future. Well, I don't really know that much about it. I've heard about it, and I know that you are associated with it, but could you maybe tell us what this group is doing and why it's so important to you?
Yeah, okay. So while you may not be able to see me, I can tell you that the badge is on my left sleeve here, and it's close to my heart, and this is also my interest in it. So we are the Scientists for Future here at the regional group in Osnabrück. So there are many regional groups all over Germany and also other places in Europe, and I'm engaged here. So we Scientists for Future care about the climate and biodiversity crisis, and more generally the planetary crisis in general. We have been founded in 2019, shortly after the Fridays for Future founded themselves in order to back them up with scientific information and to support our common concern about the climate and about nature, the earth, because as everybody, I think, in the meantime knows that we are in a very dire situation. There's the climate crisis, temperatures are raising, CO2 emissions don't drop, and we are really on a bad trajectory at the moment if we do not really make a steep turn and reduce our CO2 emissions and take care of the planet in a better way. And this is something that the Scientists for Future do. So very practically here at the university, people who are interested can join us, and we are collaborating with the University of Applied Sciences as well. So we are jointly together, and we have a lecture series each term. We organize 6 to 7 lectures with experts on a variety of topics, so political sciences, natural sciences, psychology, health, and so on. And they give public lectures. It's not just for an academic audience, but it's for everybody. It's actually for the citizens of Osnabrück and everybody who wants to join it. It takes place in a big lecture hall here at the university, and it's also being recorded, so one can watch those lectures afterwards. And it's very well received by the people in Osnabrück. That's one of our flagship projects, but we have other projects as well. So I'm, for example, also engaged in education for sustainability. We have now worked out a rough plan how we would like to instruct teachers to instruct their students about climate change, because that's not sufficiently taught at the schools, but it's very important. And of course, we're doing many other things as well. So mainly informing people about the climate crisis, give scientific information, inform people, and also show what we can do, what each of us can do individually, but also as a group, because it's not enough just to switch off the light more often in the dining room in the evening. That will not going to save the world, but we have to get together, collaborate, join up in groups, exert pressure on politicians, but also on other parties involved, stakeholders. And that's a big movement, and I'm really very happy to be in that movement. It's completely open. We are not an organization. We are a grassroots movement with some structures, of course, but we are not some fully organized organization. And it's very dear to my heart, because if you relate it to my research, so I'm a cognitive developmentalist. I'm interested in how children grow up and how their cognition unfolds, and all this is very beautiful for me. But if we don't care about the future of the planet, how can we then care about the cognitive development of children? So these things go hand in hand. There's not academic research and it's totally decoupled from what is going on in the world. On the contrary, it's embedded, and I can't follow my research about child development if I don't make sure that they have a future into which they can develop. And that's something really existential, and therefore this is a great engagement that I am doing.
You've mentioned that you are in the group in Osnabrück. Are there also groups in other cities? So for listeners who are not in Osnabrück, can they also look for the Science for Future in their city, or is it just Germany? Is it international?
No, it is international, but I'm most knowledgeable about our German structure, of course, and maybe not at each university, but at many universities there are regional groups, and you can just Google for them. We have a common format. We have a common domain, let's say, where you can find us. So if you Google for Scientists for Future in Osnabrück, you will come to our webpage, and there you can see our projects, what we are doing, the lectures, and all this information. And if you are at any other place, you can visit their websites and get to know and engage also in their work.
Yeah, we will definitely add the links to the show notes. Thank you very much for pointing this important topic out, because I often feel like it's a topic close to many people's hearts, but it's really hard to get into it. And often, at least I feel like, well, I don't even know where to start. So it's really good to know that there's a group where I can join easily and just learn things about climate and climate protection. Yeah. So thank you very much.
I thank you.
With that, we also come to the end of our interview. Thank you so much for your time and talking to us today. And we're really happy to learn things from people who are experienced in one area. So thank you very much for being here.
Yeah, I thank you for having me.
When you enjoy listening to us, the best way to support us is by following us on your chosen podcast app. This could either be Google Podcast, Spotify, or Apple Podcast. Another good way to support us is by following our Instagram account, which is called kaleidoscience_pod. On our Instagram account, you will also get regular information on the next episode. Thanks a lot for supporting us. This was Kaleidoscience, hosted by Elisa Palme and Sönke Löw. Produced by Alina Ohnesorge, Elisa Palme, Sönke Löw and Sophie Kühne. Produced in collaboration with the Cognitive Science Student Journal. The music was produced by Jan-Luca Schröder. The logo was designed by Annika Richter. Thank you for listening and joining us on our journey through conversations on cognitive science.